Hello and welcome to another FIFA 19 feature. I am Bromo18 and this is part 2 of my FIFA 19 career mode wish list. Now if you haven't seen part 1 yet, I would highly advise you go back and watch that first, as we'll be leading on and linking back to the points that we've made in part 1 in this video and the next part as well. But just to recap, in part 1 we discussed the reintroduction of game face, manager customization, the ability for your manager to have a contract and negotiate the different elements that come with that, the ability to have manage even an international side as a standalone rather than having to manage a club side as well, press conferences and how they can be reworked and given much more depth and quality. We also talked about how the request of funds feature was removed for FIFA 17 career mode, didn't return in FIFA 18, and that then led on to the board interaction, how we could then request different improvements and various other things as well. Now in part 1 I also alluded to but didn't go into detail about something called facilities, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. Now facilities can be split into 4 to 5 different sections, and what I believe should be done in this is all clubs should have facilities for different sectors, such as training. Now before I go into detail about training facilities, it's worth a mention that since the introduction of training to career mode, you only get a limit of 5 slots, which can be used for multiple players, or you can train one player all throughout those 5 slots, but either way you only get 5 slots per week, which is of course extremely limited and an unrealistic representation of how it works, because you know you're not only going to be training 5 players, the whole squad is going to be on both team regimes and probably individual regimes as well to improve certain elements of their game. So I think this needs to be rectified, this needs to be heavily worked on, and then redistributed for the next career mode as well. But moving back onto facilities, training wise, I believe that facilities will work in a way where the better facilities you have, the more consistent and more efficient the training will be. So for example, I would say give it a rating out of 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. Now if you've got 10 for training facilities, your training's going to be very efficient. A lot of players are going to be improving a lot. You're going to get a lot of really good positive results, whereas if your training facility is 1 rated, it's going to stagnate quite a lot. It's not going to be as efficient, and they're not going to improve quite as much. Now obviously also the player themselves will contribute to this, as you know, in FIFA 18 career mode, training will work as in they'll get a certain grade, A to E, and then it will work based on that, or F as well if they fail, and then it will improve based on that A. You will improve a lot more than say if you get F. Now I believe that should still play a part, but it also should come down to the facilities and also various other elements as well, such as staff, which will come on more to in the future. On that note, it's also worth mentioning that you can only improve a certain amount of attributes through training, whereas I believe every attribute should be improved. So for example, the likes of pace, sprint speed and acceleration can't actually be trained on in the current career mode, whereas that's unrealistic. You can improve your pace with work, and I think EA should now introduce the ability to be able to increase every single attribute should you actually train on it. Now what facilities will also do, apart from training, is also improve the likelihood of someone wanting to play for you. So say for example you're a League 1 side, mid-table maybe, an average size club, but you've got training facilities 8, 9, 10. Players will be more interested in coming to play for you, because that is an appealing factor. That is, you know, something that will contribute to their growth as a player. Now an example of this in real life terms would be Bury FC. Now Bury actually share a training ground, Carrington, with Manchester United, so as you can imagine it's, you know, a 5-star training complex, and a lot of players, managers alike, have said one of their reasons for going to Bury was the fact that the training facilities are there, and you know that is a real appealing factor for them. So any League 1, League 2 club, a lower down club in general, doesn't have to be in England, could use that as a factor which will appeal different people to come to their club. Next up on my facilities list is youth facilities. Now, a lot of people like using the youth academy in career mode. There's a lot of people who will actually have a youth only career mode, and as a result, the youth system in career mode has come in for a lot of criticism, from myself included. It's extremely limited, not really a realistic representation, but even if it's not realistic, you expect some sort of innovation there, but it isn't. It's pretty much stagnated since it was first introduced, and that makes a lot of unhappiness amongst the FIFA players. We will talk about the youth academy in more detail in part 3 of this, but for now I just want to talk about the youth facilities. Now, like the training, there will also be a rating out of 10 option, and youth facilities will have an impact on the progress of young players hired, and similar to training will also have an impact on the likelihood of you being able to appeal to young players in order to bring them to your club, and how attracted they'll be, depending on the facilities and other aspects as well. Now, it's worth bearing in mind that all facilities, training, youth and the others that are to come all cost money to improve, and every time you improve they will go up by 1, and to improve these you would have to go to the board, as we talked about board interaction in the last video. You'd have to go to the board and request that they improve them, and either they can accept or reject your request, and you put forward your case as to why you believe they should be improved. Now, the board would be more likely to improve the youth facilities if they have a higher emphasis on youth development. So you can find this out by, when you go into the objectives list, you see they have 5 different categories, and one of them is youth development, and then they have an emphasis either critical, high, very low, etc. Now, I'll come to talk more about youth facilities in part 3 when we discuss the youth academy in detail. And now I want to move on to scouting facilities. Now, these facilities will once again be rated out of 10, just like training and youth. And what scouting facilities will do will allow you to improve the rating of your scouts. For a start, obviously you get a quality of scouts 1 star to 5 star. You would actually be able to improve that through the facilities, and also it would help you to improve or increase rather the amount of places you have available for scouts, so then you could send more scouts out. And in the higher the scouting facilities, the more places you can scout in, because as you know, you could be any side, but if you've got the transfer budget, you can then send your scouts over to anywhere in the world, really, any continent, which is, it's just not going to happen, is it? If you're a League 2 side, you're not going to be able to send scouts over to South America, I'm afraid. It just doesn't happen. And on a side note, the money that you use to send scouts to different places actually comes out of your transfer budget, which is really, really bad. You should have different budgets allocated for these sort of things. It shouldn't, at no point ever should it come out of your transfer funds that have already been allocated to you at the start of the season to sign players. So I'm not quite sure why this hasn't yet been implemented. An overall view of what scouting facilities will do is that they are basically going to improve the likelihood of you finding a future star, because of the fact that your scouts are improving in quality all the time. You're expanding your database. So if your scouting facilities are 1, you've got low quality scouts, you're not being able to go to different places such as, you know, Italy and Brazil and Spain, etc., etc. There's a lot lower chance of you being able to find a 94 potential player than, say, if your scouting facilities are rating 10 and you've got scouts in every corner of the globe. So I think this would be a really welcome addition to the scouting system, because it's similar to the youth system. It's stagnated again, and we need just refreshments here and there, just to sort of increase our interest, really, and help to prolong the mode. Now I want to move on to part 4/5 of the facilities section, which is corporate/stadium. Now, both of these sort of come under the same roof, which is why I've merged them both into one. It's worth noting that you will have far less control over this than the other facilities as is the case in real life, but you will still have the ability to make requests to the board anyway, just as managers can in real life circumstances. Now, first things first, what needs to be noted is that a lot of people criticise the fact that you can only have one stadium and it can never change throughout career mode. You might have started in League 2 as a team, you've got a small stadium, you've worked your way out to the Premier League, you've won Premier League titles, you've won Champions League titles, but you're still playing at, you know, Crown Lane or something, Town Park, etc, etc. And it's a real problem because it really decreases what little amount of authenticity the game actually had, because, you know, it just brings you back down to earth because you've done all these, you know, you've made all these successful achievements and you're still playing in a 10,000 seater stadium. It just doesn't work. In addition to this, if you download the latest squads when you're setting up your career mode, you have to stay in the same stadium that you started with. If you try and change and then download the latest squads, it will revert back to the original stadium. This is bad. The fact that this happens is constantly brought up to EA and they've done nothing about it, so I'm not quite sure what's happening there. But moving back onto stadium facilities, I believe that a stadium should have the ability to be expanded at minimum, and also new stadiums should also be able to be built if you've maximised the potential capacity utilisation for that stadium. Now, obviously the board may reject your request to build the stadium if, one, they see no point because maybe you're not selling out, there's not a lot of potential, two, they don't have the finances, or three, maybe they're just not interested in investing anymore, quite simply. On the other hand, what may backfire for them in this situation is that poor stadium facilities may result in support and unhappiness towards the board, and as a result there'll be a lot of hostility there and negative feelings. Leading on from this is corporate facilities. Now, they'll obviously be part of the stadium, they can be rated out of 10 like the other facilities as well, and what they will do is, I mean, one, you can charge higher prices if the corporate facilities are of a high level. Obviously that's not down to the manager, the board will have control over that really, and then in turn that will generate more revenue for the club if it's performing well. If the facilities are good and you're bringing in more people, you're then generating more turnover, which can only be good for the finances of your club. That brings me to the end of the facility section, and as a result to the end of part 2 of this FIFA 19 career mode wish list. In part 3 we'll be talking about youth academy, player interaction, financial management, possibly, and much more. It may get split into a part 4, but I'll have to see. There's still a lot of depth to this, there's a lot more to add on, and I know there's a lot of things that people feel like can be improved on, myself included. On that note, it is time for me to bid you farewell. So if you've made it through this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please like it if you enjoyed the video. If you didn't like it, dislike, leave me some feedback. What can I do to improve? Subscribe if you haven't already. You enjoyed the content. I have a lot more FIFA content. Currently got a Bristol Rovers career mode save, a lot planned as well in the future, FIFA Ultimate Team stuff as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And on that note, it is time for me to go. I'll see you soon.